All right, let's talk Giants versus Vikings. Now, I know what you're thinking. A late season game that on the surface looks like one you could probably skip. But trust me on this, once you start peeling back the layers and really dig into the analytics, well, a fascinating and brutally one-sided story starts to emerge. Let's break it down.
So let's just start with the basics, right? The tail of the tape. You've got the 2-11 Giants squaring off against the 5-8 Vikings. I mean, both teams are pretty much out of the playoff picture. Both are coming off seasons that were, let's just say, deeply disappointing. This is the kind of game that just screams low-stakes football. But that, my friends, is where the obvious story ends. So that really begs the question, doesn't it? When two struggling teams clash this late in the year, what are we supposed to expect? Is it a coin flip, a battle of who wants it less? Well, the advanced data, it suggests a much clearer, almost predetermined outcome. And that answer is this. It all comes down to one team having a weapon that is just perfectly, almost scientifically engineered to completely dismantle the other team's entire philosophy. See, this isn't about heart or who's more motivated. It's about a structural, analytical mismatch that is just way too big to ignore.
This is where we really start our deep dive. The game isn't just Giants versus Vikings, no. It's the Vikings' elite, top-tier defense going up against the Giants' inefficient, struggling offense. And let me tell you, when you put these two specific units under the microscope, the game's script practically writes itself.
Now, what's really interesting here is the massive statistical gap this reveals. The Giants' offense is sitting at 19th in DVOA, which is a metric that basically grades every single play of the season. A negative number here means they are almost 2% worse than a perfectly average team. Now compare that to the Vikings defense, which has a negative EPA, or expected points added. To put it simply, that means on any given play, the Vikings defense is actually reducing the other team's chances of scoring. That's not just good, folks. That's the definition of elite.
Okay, so those are the stats, but how does this dominance actually play out on the field? Well, let's look at the first key battleground, the passing game. This is where the Giants' whole offensive strategy runs headfirst into the Vikings' absolute greatest strength, creating what can only be described as a tactical nightmare for New York.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty numbers, we got to get on the same page about one key stat, average depth of target, or ADOT. It's simple, really. It just measures how far down the field a quarterback is throwing the ball on average. So a high ADOT, that tells you a QB loves to go for the big play, the deep shot.
And here it is. For Giants quarterback Jackson Dart, that number is 9.3 yards, which happens to be the fourth highest in the entire league. This guy is constantly looking for the home run ball. But to let those deep routes actually develop, a quarterback needs one thing above all else: time. He needs time in the pocket. And this number right here, this is the whole problem for New York. 33%. That is the rate the Vikings defense generates pressure on opposing quarterbacks. It's one of the best marks in the entire NFL. They just do not give you time to breathe, let alone wait for a receiver to get 20 yards downfield.
So here's the crucial part. What happens when that irresistible force of pressure meets the very movable object of the Giants' pass protection? You get this number, 22.8%. That's Dart's pressure to sack rate. It means when he does get pressured, he gets taken down for a sack almost a quarter of the time. This is a complete recipe for disaster. A deep ball quarterback who's super susceptible to sacks facing a defense that literally lives on creating pressure. Okay, so if throwing the ball is basically a minefield, the logical next step is to lean on your running game, right? Control the clock, take some of that heat off your quarterback. Well, for the Giants, that particular escape route is completely blocked off.
This chart just tells the entire story of the ground game in two simple bars. First, you've got the Giants, averaging a pretty meager 3.8 yards per carry. That's not great to begin with. But then look at the Vikings bar. They only allow 2.1 yards after first contact. That means even if a Giants runner gets past the line, the Vikings swarm to the ball and absolutely prevent any of that extra backbreaking yardage.
So what do you have? You have no reliable passing game because of the constant pressure, and you have no reliable running game because of disciplined, powerful tackling. The Giants' offense becomes totally predictable. They're one-dimensional, and that allows an aggressive defense like the Vikings to just pin its ears back and attack, because they know there is no counterpunch coming.
So, let's put all of these pieces together. We've looked at the absolute mess in the passing game. We've looked at the struggles in the running game. When we synthesize all these mismatches, the data gives us a very clear verdict on how this game is probably going to unfold.
This table just lays it all out perfectly. Pillar 1, the Vikings absolutely win the passing down battle through their relentless pressure. Pillar 2, the Vikings win the rushing down battle by preventing any big plays. And then you have the third pillar, the inverse mismatch, which is the real nail in the coffin. When the Vikings do have the ball, their own struggling offense gets the gift of facing a Giants defense that ranks 30th in the league. So even a below-average offense should be able to move the ball on them. It's just a complete advantage in every single phase of the game. And based on all this overwhelming evidence, the projection model doesn't just pick a winner. It gives a very specific, very confident score. The model forecasts a 23-9 victory for the Minnesota Vikings. That's a 2-touchdown win, based entirely on these fundamental, structural mismatches we just talked about.
Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. We always hear that football is a game of inches, right? That on any given Sunday, anything can happen. But as analytics get more and more powerful, are we entering an era where some matchups are just so lopsided on paper that the outcome is pretty much a foregone conclusion? Can a spreadsheet truly see the future? I guess we'll find out.